Before we begin, I need to say something clearly. I do not condone violence. Not mine, not his, not anyone's. What I did that night in the parking lot is not something I am telling you to do. I want that on record before a single word of this story is told. Welcome to Breaking the Cycle. I am Alana Moore. At the end of our first episode, I told you I would take you back to the night of December 23rd, 2014, and give you my side of the story. Today, that is exactly what I am doing. Before I do, I want to say one more thing. There are 3 sides to every story: my side, his side, and the truth. What you are about to hear is my side of the story. I'm not pretending it's the only side, but I am going to be the only one that will ever tell my side of this story exactly how it should be. To understand December 23rd, 2014, you must understand where it all began. I was 16 years old and a senior in high school when I met him. It did not happen by accident. My girlfriend had been trying to set us up for 2 months. She told me he was funny and that he was 21, which meant he could buy us alcohol and cigarettes, so we no longer had to shoulder tap. I told her I did not care about any of that. I asked her the questions that mattered to me most. Does he work? Does he have a car? Does he have his own place? Is he in school? She answered no to every single one. Mind you, I was 16, I was working, I had my own car, and I was in school and getting ready to go off to school. I always wanted to be a lawyer, so my goal was to go to community college and then transfer and then go to NYU Law. I saw the red flags from a mile away, and I said no. Every time she asked for 2 full months, my answer was no. Then one Friday night after a football game, she told me to meet her at a party. Of course I was going to meet her at this party. I was a senior in high school and it was a Friday night. So I showed up to the party and lo and behold, he was there. Of course he was there. He had no friends his own age. That is how it's happened. That is how I met this man. The thing about my ex is he is funny, he's very charismatic, as most narcissists are. He was 21, almost 22, and what I did not know at the time, and would not find out until I was about 4 months pregnant, was he was just released from jail for statutory rape. I was not thinking about the red flags the night I met him. I was thinking about the fact that someone was paying attention to me, and he was 21. Really? That means I must be the bomb, right? A 21-year-old man wants to talk to me? Oh, hell yeah. I want to sit with that for a second because I think people hear that and they jump to judgment. What I want you to understand is that Evan Stark, a sociologist and a forensic social worker who has spent decades studying how abusers gain and maintain control over their partners, identified something called the predatory targeting of young women. Specifically, women whose brains are not fully developed and who have not yet learned to recognize manipulation for what it is. He was not a peer making a mistake. He was an adult man who chose a 16-year-old girl. That is not a love story. That is a pattern. Over the next 15 years, I had 2 children with him. We would break up and be on and off for years. There were good periods and terrible ones. At one point, during what I felt like a turning point, we got married. Then things spiraled in ways I do not have the words for, or at least words I'm not ready to say in the full just yet. What I can tell you is I spent 15 years in a relationship defined by emotional and physical abuse that left me 89 pounds and unrecognizable to myself. I was so ashamed of what my life had become that I hid it from my own family. That shame is not a character flaw. It is a feature of what Stark calls coercive control, a term he developed to describe a systematic power of domination that goes far beyond physical violence. Coercive control targets your freedom, your sense of self, and your ability to trust your own mind. It is not weakness that keeps women in relationships like that. It is architecture, and is architecture built over 15 years. Now let me tell you about December 23rd, 2014. It was 2 days before Christmas. My kids still needed Christmas presents, and our daughter had activities that needed to be paid for. Mind you, we hadn't seen him in 2 weeks. So when I texted him about this, he said to meet him at his job so he can give me the money to get the presents. I got in my car and I drove to meet him at work. On the way, I saw him. He was not alone. He was in the car with the woman he had been having an affair with. He was driving her car. Not to meet me, not towards his job, but somewhere else entirely. So I decided to follow them. He saw me as I was following them and told me to follow him so he can give me the money. He drove all the way from Union City to Newark, California. Mind you guys, it's about 15 minutes apart. I know you're not familiar with this area. Then he decided to pull into the Home Depot parking lot in Newark. He got out of the car. I got out of my car. He walked over towards me and got in my face. The first words out of his mouth were not, "Here's the money for Christmas." The first words out of his mouth were, "Bitch, fuck you, I want a divorce." He then spat in my face. I spat right back in his. I told him he can have a divorce. I said, after 15 years and 2 kids, this is how you're going to treat your wife? His response, and I want you to really hear this, was that he had never loved me and that I had ruined his life by having our son, Jacob. He then punched me in the face. I need to pause here and tell you something that still breaks me. Our 3-year-old daughter was in the car. She was watching all of this. I started to fight back. His mistress got out of the car and came at me too. So now I'm fighting the both of them at the same time. 3 strangers intervened. They pulled both of them off of me. One of them looked at him and said, "I cannot believe you're doing this to your wife." Once I got free and I got back in my car, he lit a cigarette and told me his girlfriend was calling the cops and that I was going to jail. Then, I will never forget this as long as I live, he said, while he was lighting that cigarette, "I will have my cake and I will eat it too. You will always be my wife. I will see you tomorrow." Mind you, this man just told me he wanted a divorce and that he never loved me. I still can't believe it. Like, really? Are you delusional? He would do that to me all of the time. He would tell me he loved me, then he would tell me he was sorry 5 minutes later. He would tell me I am the devil that ruined his life, and he wished he could kill me and get away with it. It was always a roller coaster with him. I snapped. I hit him with my car. He is still alive. He is walking around fine today, but I broke his tibia and fractured something else. He had to have 2 surgeries, and I'm pretty sure there's still a metal rod in his leg. And yes, I was arrested. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Here is what I will say. I am not asking for a verdict. I am telling you the truth of what happened and why. After 15 years of abuse, after being punched in the face in the parking lot in front of my baby girl, and after being told that my son's existence ruined his life, I broke. That is what a breaking point looks like. Judith Herman, a Harvard psychiatrist and one of the most respected voices in trauma research, describes it as the moment when a person's capacity to regulate under extreme stress simply runs out. I had been running on empty for 15 years, and that night the tank gave out. There is a concept called the cycle of violence that I want to walk you through because it explains exactly what happened in the parking lot. Lenore Walker, a psychologist who pioneered the study of battered women in the 1970s and whose research has shaped domestic violence law and policy ever since, identified the stages of abuse that relationships move through: tension building, the incident, reconciliation, and the calm. The last stage, the calm, is where abusers do exactly what he did that night. They make promises, they needle you, they remind you of your connection to them. "You will always be my wife. I will see you tomorrow." That was not closure, that was bait. And after 15 years of that cycle, I was out of the capacity to absorb it. My aunt and uncle Paul and Diane Souza paid for 2 attorneys on my behalf. I want to name them because what they did for me was not small. It was life-saving, and I do not want to say that lightly. I ultimately took a plea deal, and when the judge gave me my terms, he looked at me and looked at my ex and said, "Mr. Perry, you're not a victim in this situation. Your wife is the victim in this situation." The terms placed on me were house arrest for 6 months, but I was permitted to work, attend my children's activities, and go to school. I was also required to complete 1 full year of domestic violence classes, 2 hours every Tuesday for 52 weeks. I want to tell you about those classes because I think people hear court-ordered DV classes and assume it is a punishment. For me, it became one of the most important educational experiences of my life. That class taught me what was actually happening in my relationship. It gave me the language to things I had experienced but never had words for. It introduced me to Evan Stark's framework of coercive control, and this time I was not just reading about it in a textbook. I was sitting in a room full of women who had lived it too. The class helped me understand the financial abuse, the psychological tactics, the way abusers keep survivors trapped, not through locked chains or locked doors, but through isolation, shame, and the systematic erosion of sense of self. That same year, I enrolled in school, and when I walked into my first introduction of psychology course, something clicked into place. I was not just a student learning theory, I was also a person finally seeing my own life clearly for the first time. That is how I ended up taking classes at a community college and eventually found my way at UC Berkeley. That is why I wrote my senior thesis on why crisis-only domestic violence response is not enough. And that is how I ended up here talking to you. I am telling this story because I never want someone else to tell it for me. I am telling it because there are women right now in the same parking lot I was in. Maybe not literally, but emotionally. And they deserve to know what happened to them has a name. And that name is not their fault. I am also telling it because the system I studied failed me before December 23rd, 2014 ever happened. The night I was punched in the parking lot was not the beginning of the abuse. It was the end of 15 years of it. And in those 15 years, there was no sustained support system that caught me. No long-term resource that said, here is a pathway out. There was nothing that addressed the psychological, financial, and emotional trap I was in. Only crisis responses after the worst moments had already passed. That is the gap my research is about. That is the gap the Sousa Foundation is being built to close. And that is what this podcast is going to keep talking about. Episode after episode until the systems change or until every woman who needs to hear it finds her way here. Because recovery is not a 30-day shelter stay. Recovery is a life, and every woman deserves a chance to build one. Thank you for being here for episode 3 of Breaking the Cycle. If what I shared today resonated with you, please share this episode with someone who needs it. You never know who in your life is sitting in silence with a story like mine. If you are ever in a situation that feels familiar, if you recognized something in what I described today, please know that help exists, even when it is hard to find. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788. Again, the Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START, START, in all capital letters to 88788. Next episode, I will take you back even further to what it looked like to be 16 years old in a relationship with a man 5 years older, and why I did not see it coming, because that is where the story really starts. Until then, keep breaking the cycle.